Go down, you blood-red roses. Go down, you pinks and posies. Ahoy, me boys, there she blows, a monster of the deep. Lower the boats away, me lads, she must be 60 feet. Steady, boys, now hold your nerve, she's a killer of a whale. She could sink this ship with just one flick of her mighty, mighty tail. Go down, you blood-red roses. Go down, you pinks and posies. Go down, you blood-red roses.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Bad Spot and the very first episode of my brand new Sundered Isles campaign. Finally, we begin. At the top of the episode, you will have hopefully enjoyed an excerpt from the sea shanty Blood Red Roses, read by the wonderful Lowry and Davies. Lowry is a Welsh voice actor, editor and producer who is currently playing Celia on the Magnus Protocol on the Rusty Quill Network, amongst a whole bunch of other great stuff. And I have had the personal pleasure of being betrayed by Lowry in many games of Blood on the Clock Tower that we both play in over on the RP Geeks Twitch channel. So a huge thank you to Lowry for kicking this campaign off in fine style. Now, if you're a fan of shanties, sea songs and sailors' hymns, then you are in for a treat this season because there just might be a motley crew of special guests waiting in the wings to read some out for us. And speaking of treats, I just want to give a shout out to two other creators and their Sundered Isles campaigns before we begin. They are Rainy Plays Games and Gen Cam Plays Board Games. Rainy has just wrapped up his campaign and it was pretty damn good, and it also features a monkey companion, so that's obviously great. Whilst Jen's is only just beginning, her Session 0 sets things out really interestingly in a very, very intriguing way, and also, she named her main character Luna in tribute to my Luna, so that's just very touching and I love that so much. I'll throw links to their channels down below, so if you can give them a follow and check out their stuff, because you absolutely should, then that would make me very, very happy. And whilst I have you, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are really important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to support the channel, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. There you'll get early access to all episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and your name on screen like these lovely people. So, I'm assuming that by this point you have all seen the Session 0 where I lay out the campaign in detail and introduce you to Gideon Finch and his monkey companion Lorenzo. Now, if you haven't, then you probably should do that now. It's linked below, but if you don't want to, then that's also fine. It's all good. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Gideon Finch is uncharacteristically nervous. He stands in the reception hall of a grand manor house. It was probably more opulent at some point in the past, but now its grandeur is somewhat faded. The sound of revelry, laughter, the clinking of glasses, a meandering string quartet can be heard behind a large set of heavy mahogany doors, on either side of which stands an attendant, neatly dressed in a powder blue uniform. Gideon stops to check his appearance in an oval mirror, and his outfit is immaculate. He has a maroon dress coat over a starched white shirt. You can tell he is just desperate to unbutton. And he adjusts the paisley cravat at his neck and then threads a loose wisp of his blonde hair behind his ear. He takes a deep breath. Takes a moment to centre himself. He's nervous, not because this is unfamiliar ground. He's well versed in affairs such as this. He feels more than comfortable rubbing shoulders with the people such as this, even though he despises them. No, He's nervous because, for once, he is not doing this for himself. He moves over to the doors and adjusts his cravat one last time. The attendants push the heavy doors open, and the sights and sounds of the party inside spill out into the reception hall. Gideon plasters on a smile and under his breath says, "These fucking people." And we're going to flash back now. It's the day before, right? Or it's dusk, we should say. The sun is on its way down and it's slipping over the horizon, bathing everything in this pinkish peach light. We are on a long stretch of fortified seawall with crenellations running along the full length of it. Down below where we are is a sheer drop. It's about 50 meters straight down onto jagged rocks, and there the waves are crashing against the base of the stone wall. Now, the wall runs in a few kilometers in each direction, with the jumbled mass of mismatched stucco buildings that constitute the bustling port of Port Emberlyn off in the distance. Where we are, there is only one building. It's a squat, ugly block set back from the wall by about 20 meters, and it's connected only by this narrow stone bridge. Its walls are featureless. It is just a miserable, hefty hunk of slate grey rock. This is the box, and the box is Port Emberlyn's prison. Right now, one of its prisoners, Gideon Finch, is just glad to be outside, even though he's well aware that prisoners are only brought out to be shot. Where he is now is certainly preferable to being inside the box. But he's not going to be shot. He's been brought outside to stand before Sabrina McCabe, governess of Port Emberlyn. Now, we need to roll up some details for her, don't we? Because we established her vaguely in the session 0, but let's kind of dial down on something. Okay, so whilst I said I wanted to up the odds of cursed results, I'm not going to use it unless it's appropriate. So rolling on this oracle, I could, but I'm not going to, because the vibe doesn't particularly lend itself to cursed results. I don't think. No, I'm not going to do it. Okay. What is Sabrina McCabe's first look? What have we got? Okay, 59 is poised and 22 is distinguished. Okay, that is an interesting combination. So let's envision her. Let's envision Sabrina McCabe, who is our connection. So let's not forget, she's going to be an important part of our story going forward. So we kind of need to make her good or memorable. And I think maybe to do that, we could roll up a unique detail because, you know, just for a bit of colour, there is a trademark accessory oracle. So let's see what that throws up. 57 is jewel encrusted eye patch. Okay, so we established who she is and who she is working for in session 0, whilst she is the governess of Port Emberlyn in charge of this whole place. She's also secretly an agent of the Ebb Tide, which is a network of saboteurs and spies. So let's take these roles and put it all together. So my immediate thought is that she's older, maybe in her 40s, and there's this kind of upright stillness to her, this laconic air. She has flawless dark brown skin. She has raven black hair and it's tied into a tight bun. And there is this single streak of silver grey running through it. She's dressed neatly in a blue uniform, kind of a dark blue uniform that doesn't quite look like a uniform. Looks a little bit dressed down, if that makes sense, but also a little formal. It has this kind of billowing white neckerchief and these kind of jodhpur type riding togs tucked into these high black leather boots. It's practical, but also stylish. And she has this patch over her left eye, and the fabric is like crushed black velvet. But on the patch itself, there is a spiral pattern of blue sapphires. And I don't think she and Gideon have ever met before. Like, he knows who she is, but they've not met. I think that's an important detail. And he's not shackled or bound, but by the way he's massaging his wrists, you can assume that until very recently he has been. And he looks like absolute shit, right? Because he's been in prison. But Gideon being Gideon, I think that he's feeling like he's looking disheveled and like kind of, somehow more appealing. But that's just Gideon. But the governess is standing and she has her arms folded. She's leaning against the seawall with the box behind her and she is looking him over. Gideon's facing her and he has the ocean behind him and the sheer drop down to the rocks below. Now, there are town militia posted in either direction, up and down the wall, and they're not close enough to hear this conversation. And Gideon senses that whatever is going on here is unusual, right? It wouldn't have been unusual to be brought out, given a last cigarette and just shot. But that's not what's happening. This is very odd. And he's about to break the long, awkward silence before the governess gets there first. And she says, "For someone so young, your record is quite impressive." And I think firstly, Gideon is confused, right? Because the idea of a criminal record in the Sundered Isles is like totally alien. But secondly, like, he's a little impressed because he feels like maybe his reputation has preceded him. And he says, "I'm flattered. Thank you." And whilst he's trying a bit of a smolder, she does not react at all. And she just continues. "I'll get straight to the point, because time is of the essence here, Mr. Finch. Since you set foot on my island, I know everything you've done, everywhere you've been, everyone you've swindled, and for how much. Given how easy you seemed intent on making it for us, you still somehow managed to elude our grasp at every turn. It was impressive, actually. You made no attempt to cover your tracks. You simply left a long trail of stolen heirlooms and broken hearts, and then you just disappear." Gideon says, "Look, I told the magistrate this was all a terrible misunderstanding." McCabe continues, "It's a rare gift to be able to blend in, to appear to belong, to walk amongst people you are willing to deceive so readily, so brazenly. And your targets, who perhaps stood to lose a great deal more by involving the authorities, so carefully selected." And Gideon is trying so hard here to suppress his, like a smirk, to suppress his kind of joy at being described like this. He's being complimented, but he so desperately wants to like accept it, but he also thinks like he's somehow being duped or entrapped into incriminating himself further. So he's kind of keeping stum. And the governess continues, says, "But your luck ran out, Mr. Finch. And now here we are." Gideon says, "You mentioned something about a point and time being of the essence." She says, "I wish to make you a proposition. I have need for someone with particular talents. Someone like you." And she points like back behind her, back towards Port Emberlyn, but not at the port itself, like way up into the hills that watch over the port. And in the hills, up amongst the kind of like the jungle as it starts to kind of like become a little more wild up there, we see a manor house. Now, we rolled this up in session 0, so let's quickly give it a name. Okay, 2 is Whitlock. So this is Whitlock Manor. And the governess continues. "Tomorrow night, Whitlock Manor will host an exclusive soiree for various guilds, merchant federations, and trade alliances. The sort of soiree where deals are brokered and allegiances forged. I have received word that 2 parties of some import are planning to meet, and news of this disturbs me a great deal. I need someone on the inside to get close, observe, and report back to me." And Gideon says, "Sounds straightforward. I can't imagine there could possibly be a catch." And the governor says, One of the parties concerned is the League of Smoke and Steel. And Gideon knows who they are, right? He instantly knows that this is bad news, and this is suddenly very important. This is kind of big picture stuff. This is way over his head. This is, I don't know, what we'd call like geopolitical stuff. It's way above his pay grade. And he says, "Dare I ask who the other party is?" And the governess says, "That we do not yet know." And Gideon, sensing that there's perhaps no way out of this now, says, "Why me? Don't you have people for this?" And she says, "I'm afraid to say my agents have all been compromised. I'm even more afraid to say that you are my next best option, so you can sense how precarious my position is." And Gideon says, "And if I say no?" She says, "I can have you taken to the wall and shot if that's a more appealing alternative." And Gideon's like, "Just give me a second." Okay, let's flash back to the party, forward to the party, whichever way. We're back at the party. And the main hall of the manor is pretty vast, right? There is easily a couple of hundred people milling around what would normally be a big dance floor for kind of social affairs. But it is currently a slowly rotating mass of people in formal dress. They are bending each other's ears, they are rubbing shoulders, and they are greasing palms. And there's like serving staff, attendants, and waiters kind of weaving between all these people with silver trays of canapes and drinks. And at first glance, this seems like it might just be a social event. As Gideon scans the room, he can see that this is very much a place of business. There are chairs that have been dragged into impromptu circles. There are huddles of animated people in meetings with their kind of like arms waving and they're bartering with each other. There are things being thrashed out kind of passionately. And everyone's attire is kind of strange, or kind of interesting, I think. I think there's a lot of groups that wear clearly recognizable kind of tokens of who they represent, as if they have been dispatched as delegates to do business, and they're wearing, some have perhaps like matching hats or like kind of badges or medals, or there's the thing I'm kind of thinking of, I don't know the name for it, it's like a V-shaped sash that's kind of like Masonic, like that kind of stuff. And Gideon recognizes all of these things as such, as kind of markers of people representing various groups, even though he might not know exactly who each group is. And like up above, there is an upper level, and there are kind of guests up there. There's fewer up there, I guess, because it's smaller. And they're leaning against the balustrade and looking down at the floor. They're kind of having drinks, perhaps having more secretive conversations away from the prying ears of the people down below. And Gideon takes a glass from a passing attendant and sips this sparkling wine that to Gideon tastes kind of cheap, right? And he finds himself a group to tag onto. And he's just kind of standing to the side, right? He's not close enough for them to notice him, but he's close enough so he doesn't stand out as kind of being on his own. And he acts like he's kind of listening, kind of nodding along and kind of vaguely following the conversation. But what he's actually doing is looking. He is scanning the room, looking for his mark. Okay, flashback to the seawall. And the governess is laying it all out. She is talking Gideon through who the target is. So let's roll up some details. Firstly, some pronouns. Okay, 13 is she, her. Okay, and let's roll up a name. Okay, 64 and 21 gives us Felicity Devereaux. That's a good name. Okay, so I really liked the trademark accessory oracle that we rolled on for the governess. And I think that's a cool way of being able to identify her, because Gideon can't just Google image search her. And that oracle that rolled up the eye patch for the governess is a lot of fun. And when I actually rolled that up, there was a result like below that I think is going to be absolutely perfect. And that is 53, intricate mechanical prosthetic. Like, that is perfect for someone representing the League of Smoke and Steel. I think that's just such a good fit. So the governess is laying out all this information for Gideon, and as she is, I think Lorenzo appears on the wall next to her and is kind of sidling up to her, and she reaches out and gives him a little kind of scritch under the chin, which he very much enjoys. And she says, "I'll have you outfitted and equipped for this task as desired, within reason." And Gideon kind of sarcastically says, "Great. Where do I sign?" And she reaches into her coat, and Gideon sort of kind of looks confused because he was being flippant, right? And she pulls out a knife. It is a long, straight knife. It is very old, ancient even. It is dull at the edges, but anyone would recognize that it has a certain quality to it. And she holds it out to him, and he knows what this means. He's being asked to swear an iron vow. And we established in the truths that this is sort of seen as antiquated and hokey, and Gideon absolutely thinks that. He just thinks this is a trite, kind of backwards looking bullshit tradition. But the governess is serious. Like, she is holding the knife out by the blade, offering Gideon the handle. And he begrudgingly takes it. And the governess does not let go of the blade. She fixes him with a stare and says, "Say it and mean it." And through gritted teeth and against all his better judgment, Gideon says, "By iron, I vow." Okay, so it's time to make a move, and that move is swear an iron vow. Let's have a look. It says, when you swear to complete a quest, write your vow and give it a rank. Then roll plus heart. If you swear this vow to a connection, add +1. If you share a bond, add +2. Okay, so firstly, let's name this vow. And it might be a little bit wordy, but I think it's going to have to be discover who the League of Smoke and Steel is meeting and why. Probably the most succinct way of framing that, I think. And as for rank, I think we'll make this dangerous. And if I'm in the habit of handing out tips for new players, here's one. Make your first vow, the inciting incident vow, make it self-contained and make it achievable. I don't know what's going to happen with this. We'll find out as we go. But no matter what, the vow is centered around a question, and the answer to that question will crucially move the story on. It will get us going. So I'm choosing to make something that's relatively straightforward. Now, what we learn from that might be anything but what we're doing is using this vow, the inciting incident, as a catalyst for the story. Okay, right, time to roll dice. We are swearing an iron vow to a connection, so we get +1, and we are doing so against our strongest stat. What could conceivably go wrong? Let's swear an iron vow. First roll of the campaign. Rolling plus heart. That is a strong hit. On a strong hit, you are emboldened, and it is clear what you must do next. Take +2 momentum. Now, I think that may well just be the first time I have ever rolled a strong hit on an iron vow at the top of a campaign. Feels weird, not going to lie. So our momentum hops up to 4 right off the bat. And I think as Gideon says the words, holding the handle of this knife, looking at the governess, and her expression is like determined, but it's also hard to read. And as Gideon says the words he thinks are hackneyed and empty, he feels the hairs on the back of his wrist kind of prickle, and he lets go immediately. Like, there was something there was this feeling. But Gideon being Gideon, he is absolutely not willing to unpack it or examine that right now. And he says, "Fine, I'll need something to wear." And back at the party, like I said, Gideon is sort of loosely attached to this one group. And let's just say they're representatives of like a whaling guild or something. But he's just kind of low-key nodding along, looking like he belongs. But he's all the while scanning the room, trying to be surreptitious, trying not to look like he's being too obvious, but he is searching the room for Felicity Devereaux, and he has no idea what she looks like. All he knows is that she has an intricate mechanical prosthetic, and like we've not even defined that yet. So this is going to be another move, and that move is going to be gather information. The move says when you search for clues, conduct an investigation, analyze evidence, or do research, roll plus wits. So let's see what we can see as he scans the room looking for his mark. Let's gather information, rolling plus wits. Okay, that is a weak hit. On a weak hit, the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. So firstly, we'll take that momentum. Very nice. That is up to 5. So what do we find out? I think we find Felicity. I think we find her, or we at least learn where she is. And I think something is going to hinder us because we did roll a weak hit. So what I'm going to say is that we find her, but she is upstairs, like she's on that top level looking down over the balustrade. So there is this physical distance between us. But to make it more interesting, I'm going to say that we get waylaid, and we get waylaid by someone talking to us, and we are going to have to get away from them without raising suspicion. So let's tie all this together and let's envision this. So Gideon has been watching people go by. He's been watching them talk, watching them wheel and deal. And all the while, he's been continuously searching the hall for Felicity Devereaux without a great deal of success, right? And he's starting to get frustrated, starting to wonder maybe if this is some like elaborate setup, like he's being framed for something, although he can't think what that is. And he finishes his drink. And as he knocks it back, he looks up and something catches his eye, because Gideon is a thief, right? Or, you know, let's say kindly, he has magpie tendencies, and something shiny catches his eye. There's this glint that cuts through the warm candlelight and the thick cigar haze. There's this glint of something green, a green jewel set into the back of a hand, a mechanical prosthetic hand. And that hand rests upon the balustrade. And Gideon finds himself kind of entranced by it, kind of drifting slowly away from that conversation, drifting across the crowded floor to get a closer look. And he gets to the point where he stood almost directly below, kind of looking up at the jewel and the hand's owner. And it's time to describe our mark. It's time to describe Felicity Devereaux. Let's describe her. Let's roll up something on the oracles. Okay, what's her first look? 11 is attractive. Oh, Jesus, Gideon. This is catnip for Gideon. And this now has the potential to go very, very badly. Okay, what else? 80 is theatrical. Theatrical's kind of odd. I wonder if that means that she's kind of being quite theatrical about how she's presenting that jewel, like she wants to be noticed, like it's maybe draped quite dramatically over the balustrade, and that kind of makes sense because she's meeting someone there, right? We don't know who it is yet, but like she's meeting someone and she wants to be noticed by something, and I think that perhaps that's what the theatrical means, that she looks like she is deliberately on show, and it's worked on Gideon. Like whoever she's meeting will be able to identify her by that, but also like Gideon is kind of zoning in on it. And well, actually, we're going to describe her in a bit more detail now, but I think firstly, let's do what I never do, and that is mark progress on our vow, because I think finding her definitely counts. Let's have a look at the move, reach a milestone. And it says, when you make headway on your quest by doing any of the following, and then there is a list, you may mark progress per the rank of your vow. And finding our mark definitely counts, right? That's definitely gaining meaningful insight. So let's mark progress. This is dangerous, so we will mark 2 full boxes. Let's tie it all together. So Felicity Devereaux is standing looking down on the party, and she has her mechanical hand, which like could be a full arm, but for now we can only see the hand, and it's draped theatrically over the railing. And since rolling theatrical, and with Gideon down here and like Felicity up there, I can't not think of the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene. But anyway, that is neither here nor there. Perhaps it's an undertone of like how this might go. I'm not sure. I think she's older than Gideon. I think she's probably in her early 30s. She's pale skinned and she has angular features. She has high cheekbones and these piercing blue eyes, and she's wearing a cloak and the hood is up, but there is this single loose curl of auburn hair hanging lazily down. And Gideon is like, so this is the mark. Okay, let's go. And I think without really thinking too much about it, he starts moving towards the staircase that heads up to the other level. But then suddenly his progress is checked, and it's checked by a hand thrust into his chest. And the owner of this hand is a squat man. He's kind of old, ruddy-faced, and he's swaying slightly under the weight of what's probably quite a lot of alcohol. And he's wearing a pin that bears the sigil of a mid-tier merchants guild. He's not a big player, but he's important enough to be in this room, probably to make up the numbers, I'd have thought. And he says, well, looks like they'll let anyone in here. And the kind of interruption is sudden enough and the guy's voice is loud enough for it to draw a little bit of attention to Gideon and this exchange. And this is our complication, right? I think that this merchant who is loud and gregarious has mistaken Gideon for someone else, and we're going to have to give him the slip. Somehow, whatever we do, we're going to have to get away from him. And I think the merchant grabs a couple of drinks from a passing attendant, knocks over the rest of them, and he thrusts one into Gideon's hand, and he says, "What happened to us? I thought we had an understanding. No customs, no checks, no complications. And then the first shipment comes in and my cargo is impounded and I've got to pay for my cargo. I thought we had an understanding." And to be clear, Gideon has no idea who this guy is or any idea who this guy might have mistaken him for. But he has to think fast because this merchant clearly has a grievance and is drunk enough to be a problem. So I think we're going to have to maybe talk this guy down quickly or like de-escalate the situation, or at least maybe confuse him enough to kind of get away. So either we're going to have to convince him he's mistaken or actually maybe play into it, right? And first, I think before we do this, I want to establish something because it kind of makes sense what's going on, which is I want to work out what the level of security is. I think that there has to be there has to be a level of security that is visible, right? The guests were probably searched or patted down on the way in, but there is a visible presence of guards, not armed guards with muskets or whatever, but heavy set kind of bouncers, right? And they're dotted around everywhere. And I think what's important here is there are definitely 2 of these guards standing at the bottom of the stairs, which leads up to the upper level. And I think Gideon clocks them and senses an opportunity. And I think that maybe he's realizing that if this visibly drunk merchant is causing a scene or perhaps attacks him in front of these guards, he might be able to cause enough of a distraction to slip by the guards and get upstairs unnoticed. But this is also very risky because he's also kind of in danger of being thrown out himself. So with this hand in his chest, Gideon just doesn't react. He's kind of stony-faced. None of these provocations are working. These are inflammatory comments, but he is stony-faced. And as the merchant jabs another angry finger at Gideon, Gideon just kind of grabs it, holds it tight, leans in closer, and then whispers in the man's ear. He says, "I would say it was only business, nothing personal, but that would be a lie. It was personal, and I enjoyed it very much." And this is a move, and this move is going to be Face Danger. Face Danger says, when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And we are definitely trying to provoke someone to cause a distraction, right? This will definitely be with deception or trickery, so we will be rolling plus shadow, but we're also going to leverage our scoundrel asset. The ability on that reads, when you make a move by lying, bluffing, stealing, or cheating, add +2. And then there's an extra bit about rolling a strong hit with a match. Let's not worry about that just yet. So let's firstly take all those bits, tie them together, and face danger, rolling plus shadow. A strong hit. It says on a strong hit you are successful, take +1 momentum. So we are up to 6 momentum. So what Gideon says enrages the merchant, and the merchant throws his glass down on the floor, smashing it, and throws this big meaty ham at Gideon, this big kind of fist coming his way. And Gideon, who's several drinks behind this merchant, so therefore at a significant advantage, just manages to deftly sidestep and spin and sends the merchant kind of spinning past him and towards the group that kind of sat having a conversation just kind of behind us. And the merchant goes clattering into them and like knocks someone off their chair and crashes over the table and sends drinks and glass flying everywhere. And as he does, Gideon slinks away from the carnage, and the 2 guards who are at the bottom of the stairs briefly leave their post to help everyone else. All the other security guards deal with the merchant, who is kind of screaming and hollering at Gideon, who just sips his drink, doesn't look back, and slowly walks up the stairs. And this is definitely progress, looking at reach a milestone again. Getting past the merchant and getting past security, I think, counts as overcoming a significant obstacle. So we are up to 4 out of 10. So we're upstairs now, and Gideon kind of looks behind him to see the chaos that's been wrought, and the merchant is being dragged down and kind of like kicking and screaming. And he can see Felicity, and I think fuck it, like, we're going straight in. I think we rolled up attractive on Felicity's first look, and I don't think Gideon will be able to be chill about that or like normal about that. And, you know, even though he's got a job to do and he should probably be just hanging back and observing, like, he's going straight up to her, right? There's other people around, like I said, and they're having their kind of clandestine chats, and Gideon just purposefully walks past them all, kind of sipping his drink. And he moves behind Felicity, this cloaked woman, and joins her, looking down at the scene below. And like, what is his play, right? What is he doing? I think he's going to introduce himself, right? And I think maybe his logic is, if you can call it logic, I think he's trying to signal to her that he is absolutely not a spy, right? Like, I didn't say it was good logic, but I think if you do walk up to someone and introduce yourself, and this person you are supposed to be like secretly tailing, I think that's probably the last thing they would think of, right? That this person is a spy. They've just come up and introduced themselves to me. Plus, also, I keep saying it, but like Gideon thinks that she's an absolute smoke show, and like, I don't think he can just ignore that. So this is definitely going to be a move. And this is going to be a move that we'll see Gideon doing quite a lot, and I think that is Compel. Compel says, when you try to persuade someone or make them an offer, envision your approach. And, like, there are options, and we are definitely turning on the charm, and we are kind of trying to persuade her in a sense, I think. And the persuasion here is that we are selling her on the idea that Gideon is not a threat, he's not a danger, he's definitely not a spy, and that she shouldn't be suspicious of him. Like, I'm saying it out loud now. Like, I realize this isn't a good plan, right? But there is absolutely no way that Gideon wouldn't do this, right? So we are going to attempt to charm Felicity Devereaux so she won't see Gideon as a threat. And we're going to do so rolling plus heart, but we're also going to leverage another asset, which is our socialite asset, which says, when you make a move using charm, flattery, or seduction, or by navigating elite social circles, add +1. So let's try and compel Felicity Devereaux, try and convince her that we are not suspicious, and we are going to do that rolling plus heart. Like, this is going too well at the moment, because that is another strong hit. On a strong hit, they'll do what you want or agree to your conditions, take +1 momentum. Already our momentum is up to 7. which is, getting up into useful territory. So let's envision all this. So Gideon leans lazily against the balustrade. His back is to the events down below. And you can still hear the merchant screaming as he's dragged out of the hall by security. And Felicity doesn't look at him at all. Doesn't even react. And he says, "There's always someone who gets carried away at these things. Unsurprising, really. It's a thrilling affair, all told." And she doesn't look up at all, but he kind of senses it lands. And he extends a hand and says, "Elgin Farrow, imports, exports." And she turns to look at him. And she is so strikingly beautiful. And her eyes are so electric blue that Gideon feels that, that little feeling, like just there. And she takes his hand. And he feels her mechanical fingers grip his palm and looks down and sees these tiny pistons working away. And as she kind of reaches out to shake his hand, we can see more of this appendage, and it is like the full arm. And it is elaborately encased in bronze, and it's etched with beautiful detailing, and there are clockwork gears whirring away as she shakes. And she says, "And what is it that you import, export?" And Gideon smiles softly and says, "Does it matter?" And he holds her gaze, and she doesn't break it. So let's roll up a couple more details about her, because there is a whole bunch of character oracles which are for things that we learn about a person as we actually meet them or like kind of engage with them. And again, I don't want to bring the curse die into this, because I think if she turns out to be like a werewolf or something, then that could derail things at quite an early point. And now I've said that out loud. That also would be very cool. So yeah, fuck it. I'm going to roll the curse die on this one as well. So let's roll the oracle result first. We've got a 60. And is it cursed? Odds or evens? Come on. No, it's not cursed. Fine. Okay, what does 60 say on the uncursed oracle? Manipulative. Oh, God, that is perfect, because, Gideon, you fucking idiot, right? You you are in trouble, my friend. You may think you've charmed her, and I think that she's like totally savvy with what's going on, and she is going to play him like a fiddle. She knows what's going on. Okay, let's roll one more detail up. 85 is strong. Okay, this is interesting. I think maybe it plays into the idea that Gideon maybe has underestimated her. Like, maybe stature-wise, she's quite slight, but she can definitely, I think, because of this strong result, handle herself. And I think that maybe actually the prosthetic that plays into it, right? What if that's not a prosthetic? What if that is an enhancement? What if that is like that gives her like superhuman strength or something in that arm? That's good. I like that. Gideon, you fucking idiot. You are in so much trouble, my boy. Okay, so I think speaking of trouble, I think we need to meet the people that the League of Smoke and Steel are here to speak to. Like downstairs, the mood suddenly changes. The room falls nearly completely quiet. The string quartet stumbles but keeps playing. And I think that we should introduce the other party, the people that Felicity has been sent to meet. And we're going to roll this up now using the faction oracles. Now, we know it's someone who has given Governess McCabe some concerns, and it's going to be tied to this whole big picture Industrial Revolution arms race plot that's been bubbling away in the background. So we've got lots of options here, and we've got plenty of types of factions we could kind of fold into this. And there is no cursed faction oracle, or there's no cursed option on the faction oracle. So I'm just going to roll the cursed dice by itself to see if finally I can get something cursed into my campaign, despite the odds being 50-50. So ready, odds and evens. Let's just see. Is this a cursed faction or not? It's cursed! Finally. Okay. So let's figure out what kind of faction this is, because there are plenty of good options for kind of cursed factions. And looking at the Oracle, there's one, I don't even think I should roll on this, because there's one just immediately that jumps out that makes perfect sense in this situation and makes perfect sense to the story, and that is artificers. That's a weird word to say, artificers. Artificers. Anyway, that like makes sense, right? Because if I understand that correctly, an artificer is someone who uses like magic as technology or technology infused magic. Now, I know that's like a D&D class. I'm not going to Google it, but in my world, I think that's what I'm going to take it to mean. Someone or like people who work with or manufacture magic infused technology. And like I said, that is perfect for this backstory that we have going on. So let's describe these people. Let's give them some flavor. And to be clear, what I said about the mood changing, that was initially just a signal that they were here. But because we rolled up a cursed result, I think that this should be unusual, right? It's unusual anyway to see these people here. I think that, these are of some import, and it's unusual to see them at an event such as this, certainly for everyone involved. But because we rolled up the cursed result, let's make them fucking weird, right? Let's make these guys strange and memorable. So they're artificers, but let's kind of roll up on the oracles and sense what their general vibe is. Okay, 63 says, members speak in a sinister language. And I would normally roll again on this, roll a couple of times to give us something to work with. But the very next result, again, it's weird how many times this happens to me. Like the next result under makes perfect sense. It actually fits really well. The next result under is operates from a hidden location. And that's interesting because it actually fits with how the people in this room are reacting to them. Like maybe these are reclusive, secretive people. And also B, it fits in really well because we have in our islands, in our island chain in the kind of Ember Strait, we have a faction based in Rockwood Mire, which is one of our locations that we rolled up during session 0. It's an accursed settlement up on the island we know as the Barb. And I think that maybe that's really cool, that these envoys are here and that they've come from this cursed place, or this accursed place that people know of. And it's a big deal, right? Because it's unusual they're here. People are like on edge that they're here. And importantly, it poses a lot of questions for us to answer. And I think this is going to drive the story really nicely. Okay, we are going to need a name for these people as well. And we have a bunch of oracles for this. And I've kind of just spent 5 minutes looking at them. And there are lots of different ones. And I've looked at the oracles for the craft factions, the secrecy factions, and the organization identity, and have pulled together the somewhat perfect name of the Circle of Silent Hands. Now, how many representatives of the Circle of Silent Hands are there? Now, I think maybe there's just one, but because we established that they speak their own language, I think they have an interpreter with them. So let's envision that. So Gideon is momentarily distracted from this very attractive woman that he's talking to and thinking he's doing really well with. And I think the fact that he's distracted says a lot about how weird this scene is downstairs. So security escorts 2 people into the room and the crowds part, right? People stand up from their chairs and you can feel the atmosphere changing. Kind of the air bristles. And 2 people move slowly across the floor. There is a young man leading the way. It's a boy, really, kind of in his mid-teens. And this is a Circle apprentice. He is kind of olive-skinned. He's very lean, looks very purposeful, and he's scanning the room, kind of hyper-focused. He is wearing a workshop apron, and there are bits of machinery like links of chain, cogs, and bits of clockwork, kind of just gubbins, kind of hanging off them, kind of decorating it, adorning him. And under his arm, he's carrying a massive book. Now, what this book is, I don't know, but I think big books are kind of creepy, and that's the first thing I thought of. Now, the person behind him I think that is a much older woman. She is the main envoy, and she is maybe in her 60s. She has this shock of white hair, and she is pale-skinned. She has this stern, inscrutable face, and she is also wearing an apron, but she also has a heavy cloak on that is kind of just resting on her shoulders. And unlike the apprentice, she doesn't have all the mechanical bits on her. It's just like a clean look. Now, because these are cursed folk, I want to roll up something on the Cursed First Look Oracle and see if there's something that will set her apart. Okay, 14 is a flame. Okay, ignore everything I just said. Well, not everything, but ignore the thing about there being, like, you know, a clean look. I think she actually does have something hanging around her neck, perhaps. She has, at the end of a chain, like a single cog or a single kind of clockwork contraption that's like constantly in motion, constantly ticking and whirring. And this detail that we've just rolled up tells me that maybe it glows with this unusual, supernatural, pale blue flame, like a gas flame. And I think that's actually quite a cool detail. I like that. So as they enter the room, Gideon watches them, and much like everyone else, kind of is transfixed by them. And at the corner of his eye, he sees Felicity step back from the balustrade and walk along the upper level towards the top of the stairs. And the two members of the Circle of Silent Hands cross the floor and ascend the stairs, and security falls back to their posts as they pass. So Gideon watches from a distance as Felicity meets them. He chooses not to follow. He doesn't want to look like a sick, lovesick puppy, of course, even though that's probably how he's feeling. And he watches Felicity greet them with something like caution, right? And it's all happening through the apprentice, the interpreter. And after a few words are exchanged, they head along another hallway, round the corner and out of sight. Now, I'm going to say that Whitlock Manor has like 3 floors, and we're on the first floor. So there are 2 more floors above this. And they've obviously kind of drifted off to have like a silent private meeting. And I'm going to say a couple of security guards followed them. And now those 2 guards are guarding the bottom of the stairs that lead to wherever they've gone to. And Gideon needs to follow them, right? He needs to find out what they're up to. And also, I think he probably still thinks he's got a shot with Felicity, right? I think that's unavoidable at this point. But the staircase is guarded, right? So he's going to need to figure out another way. And he stood kind of pondering this. And then he hears a tap, tap, tap on the glass of the window behind him. And it's that lovable little scamp, Lorenzo. And Gideon kind of slides up the window and perches himself on the sill. To anyone who's looking, this doesn't look unusual. It just looks like maybe he's getting a bit of fresh air. But he's, in actual fact, having a chat with his monkey sidekick. And he talks to Lorenzo, who understands completely. And he says, "Hey, I need you to find out where she went. The one with the arm. Look, let me worry about that. Just find out what floor she's on." And with that instruction, Lorenzo, and I don't know if monkeys are capable of sarcasm, but the salute that Lorenzo gives is certainly very sarcastic, and he kind of scuttles off. And this is going to be a move, I think, because we're trying to find out where Felicity has gone to, and that move is gather information, which says when you search for clues, conduct an investigation, analyze evidence, or do research, roll plus wits. Now, Lorenzo confers no mechanical advantage on this roll. I think the monkey asset does unlock abilities such as that further down the line, but in this instance, this is going to be purely narrative. So let's gather information, rolling plus wits. A weak hit. On a weak hit, the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. And very quickly, we have gone up to 8 momentum. It's not looking too shabby now. That's good. But we do have ourselves a complication, and I think what that is pretty obvious. And I think Lorenzo returns back, and after some kind of hand waving and attempts to relay information, it becomes pretty clear that Felicity and her kind of the people she's meeting are on the roof. Like, there's a roof terrace, and they are all the way up there, and that's not convenient, to say the least. And I think that means that we are going to have to make somewhat of a suboptimal choice here, because the stairs are guarded, right? And our mark is on the roof. I think we're going to have to get out and climb. I'm going to be charitable and say that it's quiet enough for Gideon to kind of time it with which way the guards are looking and slip out onto this narrow ledge outside unnoticed. And that's going to be easy enough to do. But climbing up to the roof, unfortunately, that will be a move. And that move is going to be face danger, which says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And this is going to be with agility, right? Let's say that there is this trellis with flowers on that runs kind of up the side of the white exterior of this kind of grand old house. And whilst Lorenzo kind of makes light work of kind of scampering up the side, he is a monkey. And Gideon sadly isn't. He is going to have to haul himself up using a combination of this trellis and the pipe work that kind of runs the length of the building. So with the lights of Port Emberlyn twinkling through the darkness behind him, Gideon begins to climb. And actually, as I just described, this is kind of like a nighttime scene. This seems to be as good a time as any to decide what's going on with the twin fates, because in the Sundered Isles, we have 2 moons, and the rules say that optionally we can roll to see which moon the sky favours, as each moon is believed to have great sway on the rhythms of the world. So let's roll the dice. I've got a red dice and a blue dice to see which moon the sky favours tonight. Cinder is the red dice, and that's a 10, so Cinder is full. Now, Cinder is hot, it is aggressive and passionate, so we will have to see if that plays into what kind of pans out tonight. Anyway, let's make the move first. We are climbing up the side of the manor house, so let's face danger, rolling plus edge. That is a miss. On a miss, it says you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events, pay the price, which is obviously no good. But we do have momentum to burn, and what else is it for but for burning? So let's do that and reset it back down to 2. By burning our momentum, we replace our action score with the value of that momentum, which was 8, which makes this a strong hit. And a strong hit, it says you are successful. Take +1 momentum. So instantly back up to 3. Gideon clambers up the outside of the manor house, and as he passes each floor, he glimpses in each window as he passes, and then kind of sees that there are lots of other deals going on, some of them straightforward, some of them just conflabs between people, and some involving elaborate initiation rituals. But he can't linger on this, he must push on. And Lorenzo looks down at Gideon and kind of motions to him that it's safe to follow. Gideon pulls himself up to where the railings are on the terrace, and through the bars he can see Felicity Devereaux of the League of Smoke and Steel, and the apprentice and the envoy from the Circle of Silent Hands. They are standing about 15 metres away. Felicity is deep in conversation with the apprentice. And there's also more security up here than Gideon had first realised. There are 4 guards standing at a respectful distance. And the nearest guard to Gideon is about 5 metres away, but facing the wrong direction, so he finds it easy enough to swing his legs up over the railing and crouch walk into cover. Because this roof terrace has a botanical garden type feel. There is this greenhouse over the other side. There are pruned beds of beautiful flowers running alongside a large glass skylight, which takes up the central portion of the roof. And there are planters and statues and stuff dotted around tastefully, and Gideon is now crouching behind one of these statues, trying to figure out his next move. And I mean, he's not the only one. What is our next move? We need to get closer, right? We need to try and find out what's being said. And I think it's dark enough, and Gideon is good enough at this to get closer without too much trouble. And he deftly moves between obstacles and finds himself tucked in behind another statue within earshot of a conversation and out of sight of the guards. And these statues, I think, whatever family the Whitlocks were, this merchant family, it's this kind of high society of traders or whatever, these are what the statues are of. So Gideon can hear this conversation now. He can hear it taking place, the conversation that's being done through the apprentice, through this interpreter. And remember, it's a sinister language that the members of the Circle of Silent Hands speak. And I think it's really unusual. Like, I'm imagining it's like quietly sinister. It's not harsh and guttural. It's like soft and insidious, almost as if like when you hear it, you can kind of feel it burrowing into your brain. And it's equal parts entrancing and repellent. And Gideon feels instantly uncomfortable as he hears it spoken out loud. Now, we want to learn what's going on here, so let's make a concerted effort to eavesdrop and observe what that is, and that's going to be another move. And that move is either gather information, because we are sort of searching for clues in a sense, but it also could be face danger, because we are really sort of pushing it here, and face danger allows us to roll against shadow rather than wits, and I'm not saying that because our shadow is better than our wits or anything. It doesn't confer us any mechanical advantage. It just seems narratively more appropriate, I think. This is not being done with smarts and observation. He is having to be more careful and stealthy here. So if given the choice between narrative appropriateness and rules, I will always choose the former. So let's have a look at the move again. Face danger says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And this is very much risky. And we are rolling with stealth. So we are being very surreptitious. We are trying to stay quiet, get closer, and overhear what's going on to learn exactly why this meeting is taking place. So let's face danger, rolling, plus shadow. Okay, that is a miss, and that is not good. We have no momentum because we just burned that trying not to fall off a roof. And I could technically activate Lorenzo's ability, which fires if I roll a miss, but I also feel like I'd be shoehorning him into this scene just to bail me out, and I don't want to do that because of the narrative appropriateness thing. So unfortunately, we just have to eat this one. So the move says, on a miss, you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. Okay, so I think maybe we don't fail with the spying, like we hear and see what's going on, but I think after that something else is going to happen and we are going to get caught right up in it. But what is that? Now, I appreciate that there are new people watching this video. It's the start of a new campaign after all. So let's take a quick look at a move that I rarely look at but use all the time. And that move is pay the price. Pay the price says, when you suffer the outcome of an action, choose one. And we have options. Make the most obvious negative outcome happen, ask the Oracle for inspiration, or roll on a table. Now, a lot of you may have watched me do this before, and you'll all know that I always just go with the first option, right? Because I normally have a pretty solid idea of what's happening in the story, but we're just kind of feeling our way through this at the moment. And I'm not sure, so I'm going to roll. Now, the pay the price oracle is kind of fine. It's good in a general sense, but it's not that expansive. So I'm actually going to roll on a different oracle, which is the story complication oracle, which I'm a huge fan of, and I use it quite a lot. So let's see what that throws up. 17. Enemy reveals their true agenda or nature. And like, neither of these parties are technically my enemy. But I think it's interesting about the true agenda being revealed. So maybe there's a betrayal coming. One of them is going to betray the other. And I think it makes perfect sense that it's Felicity who does it, because remember, we rolled up that she's manipulative. So yeah, she is going to like double cross these guys here. And it makes sense for Gideon to be caught up in it. So please remember that Cinder is full. We established that earlier. So whatever does happen, I think it's probably going to be violent. So Gideon is hunched down behind the statue, and he's straining to hear this conversation. And what conversation he can hear, these snatches of it, What you can make out is that it's heated, right? Felicity Devereaux clearly wants something, and she is being met with resistance. And from what Gideon can clearly see, the apprentice is really nervous. He is way out of his depth. And as Gideon shifts to get a better look at what's going on, to perhaps understand this kind of relationship better, to get a better angle on things, something happens. And it happens so fast. In a lightning fast flash of bronze, Felicity Devereaux shoots out her right arm, palm facing upwards, jabbing her metallic fingers into the throat of the apprentice, who collapses to the ground, gasping for air through his crushed windpipe. And before this is even registered, she has closed the distance between her and the envoy and has her by the neck, her metallic fingers tightening, lifting her off the ground. And the envoy is helpless, like fighting back weakly. And the security guards move in, but as they see this fearsome display of strength, they give pause. And the envoy kicks and flails. And as she does, something falls out of her clothes, and it hits the ground with a clink. And it rolls away from her towards the statue that Gideon is hiding behind. And it comes to a stop just in front of him. It's a glass vial. It's about this big. Its edges are reinforced with brass rods, and something draws Gideon to it. Inside, moving entirely of its own accord, is a shifting blue flame. It coils and shifts mysteriously, swirling around inside the glass, and he is mesmerized. And he finds himself picking it up, and he watches the flame dance before his eyes. And then he is suddenly brought back into the moment by the sound of the envoy's body crumpling to the ground. The apprentice has breathed his last breath, and between the two bodies stands Felicity Devereaux, backlit by Cinder's cool red moonlight, her murderous gaze now turned on Gideon. She shrugs off her cloak, and now Gideon can see her prosthetic in detail. It is incredibly complex, and it replaces her entire shoulder up to the collarbone. She looks at the vial of dancing blue flame that he is holding. She clenches her fist, and the emerald jewel on the back of her hand glows. And Gideon says, "I sure can pick 'em." Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not done so already, and click the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it's farewell and safe passage.